I always believed loyalty was something you earned through consistency, through showing up, through sacrifice, through quiet effort that no one applauds. I built my life on that belief. I believed that if I provided, protected, and supported the people I loved, then loyalty would naturally exist in return. For decades, that belief shaped every decision I made. I paid tuition bills without hesitation, opened doors without expecting repayment, hired family without contracts or conditions, and trusted people simply because they shared my bloodline. I thought generosity created gratitude. I thought love created boundaries. I thought family created safety. I was wrong about all of it. My name is Marcus Hale. I was 46 years old when my reality collapsed, not in an explosion of shouting or violence, but in silence, in a quiet home office, staring at a computer screen while the afternoon sun faded behind the blinds. I owned a mid-sized logistics brokerage that moved specialty equipment and rare components between ports in North America, Europe, and parts of Southeast Asia. It wasn't a global empire, but it was stable, profitable, and respected. Enough to buy a modern home in a gated community outside Reno, a lakeside retreat 2 hours away, 2 luxury vehicles, and a comfortable life that looked perfect from the outside. My wife, Elena, was a senior branding strategist for a software firm. Intelligent, polished, admired by everyone. Our daughter, Nora, had just started her 3rd semester at a private engineering college in Northern California. Bright, disciplined, kind. And my nephew, Cole, the son of my younger brother Adrian, worked for me. I had funded his education after Adrian passed away when Cole was 14. I helped raise him. I paid his tuition. I hired him. I promoted him. I trusted him. I believed he was family in the deepest sense of the word, and that belief became the knife that nearly destroyed everything I had built. The discovery itself didn't come from suspicion. It came from coincidence, cleaning, organization, a routine task that should have meant nothing. Years earlier, when Nora was a toddler, we installed a basic home monitoring system, nothing extreme, just cameras in shared spaces for safety. Elena insisted we archive the footage because she liked saving memories, old clips of birthdays, holidays, first steps, ordinary moments that felt meaningful at the time. The system had been deactivated years ago, the drives boxed up and stored away in a closet. I hadn't thought about them in ages. On a slow afternoon before a fiscal review, I was clearing old storage drives from my office, organizing backups, deleting obsolete files when I found one labeled Residential Archive Phase 3. I almost tossed it. Almost. Something stopped me. Curiosity, instinct, randomness. Whatever it was, it made me connect it to my computer. It took a long time to load. When the folders finally appeared, they looked harmless. Birthday parties, family dinners, holiday mornings, normal domestic footage. Then I saw a file dated late summer 3 years earlier. The thumbnail showed my living room, the stone fireplace, the sectional couch, the glass shelving unit Elena had chosen. 2 figures were visible in the frame. 2 people who should never have been alone together in my house during a weekday afternoon. I clicked play. Elena entered first, laughing, relaxed, wearing a pale green dress I remembered buying for her during a business trip to Milan. Then Cole walked in behind her carrying one of my reserved wine bottles like it belonged to him. He moved through my house with ownership, with confidence, with familiarity that didn't belong to him. They sat together, too close. Their hands touched. The casual intimacy wasn't hesitant or new. It was practiced, comfortable, familiar. And then I watched my wife lean into my nephew the same way she used to lean into me. The timestamp glowed quietly in the corner of the screen. Early afternoon, midweek. A day I had been out of state meeting port agents. She had told me she was working remotely. He had told me he was handling vendor logistics across town. The footage lasted several minutes. I watched every second, twice. My hands didn't shake. My breathing didn't change. There was no dramatic reaction, no emotional explosion, only a hollowing silence inside my chest, like something vital had been removed without pain but with permanence. When I finally shut the file, the house was dark. Evening had arrived without me noticing. I could hear Elena downstairs preparing dinner, humming softly like she always did, moving through the kitchen with the same rhythm I had lived beside for years. The same woman who kissed me goodbye that morning. The same woman who texted reminders about groceries. The same woman who asked about my meetings and smiled when I walked through the door. I went downstairs. I ate the food she made. I complimented the seasoning. I asked about her day. She asked about mine. We spoke in normal voices, used normal words, followed normal routines, while everything inside me had fundamentally changed. I didn't confront her. I didn't accuse. I didn't ask questions. I didn't raise my voice. I understood something very clearly in that moment. Confrontation without preparation only creates denial, destruction of evidence, and lies. Silence creates leverage. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. I watched her sleeping beside me and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no grief, only clarity, calculation. I went back to my office and reopened the drive. There weren't one or two videos, there were many. Dozens of short clips spread across several months, different days, different weeks, same location, same couch, same wine rack, same betrayal, always during business hours, always when I was away, always in my home. I copied everything onto multiple encrypted drives. One went into a safety deposit box, one into a locked drawer, one into a secure cloud vault under a new identity, redundancy, protection, control. Then I turned to our finances. For years, Elena handled household accounting. It made sense. She was organized, detail-oriented, efficient. I focused on business operations. It worked smoothly for a long time. That trust ended that morning. I logged into our joint accounts and started reviewing transactions going back several years. At first, everything looked ordinary. Utilities, insurance, travel expenses, tuition payments, groceries, maintenance. Then I noticed patterns, small at first. Transfers to external accounts labeled as family support. Emergency loans, short-term assistance. One transaction, then another, always round amounts, always similar descriptions, always tied to family help. When I traced the destination accounts, they didn't belong to my brother's household. They belonged to Cole. Thousands at a time, over months, over years, quietly, systematically, I drove to the bank. Pulled official records, confirmed ownership. It wasn't a misunderstanding, it wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate, coordinated, planned. My wife had been financially supporting my nephew while sleeping with him in my home, using my money, my resources, my trust. This wasn't just betrayal, it was exploitation, fraud, conspiracy. A system of deception built on the assumption that I would never look, that I would never question, that I would never check. That I would remain blind because I believed in family. At work, Cole still smiled at me, still greeted me with respect, still used the same tone of loyalty and gratitude, still sat in the office I gave him, using the authority I handed him, making purchases on company cards I trusted him with. I reviewed those records too, vendor meals, travel bookings, but also luxury stores, jewelry boutiques, high-end clothing outlets, flower shops, purchases that had nothing to do with logistics or procurement. When I cross-referenced dates with the footage timestamps, the pattern was undeniable. He was buying gifts for my wife with company funds. I had approved the expenses myself every month without noticing, not because I was careless, but because I trusted him, because I believed he was family, because I believed blood meant something. I printed everything: financial records, transfer histories, card statements, time stamps, metadata, documentation, evidence. Not for revenge, but for protection, for truth, for control. That afternoon, I met with an attorney in a private office overlooking downtown. I said nothing emotional. I said nothing dramatic. I laid out facts, data, evidence, timelines. She listened in silence and told me one thing that shaped everything that followed: don't confront them yet. People who feel safe expose themselves. People who feel threatened erase evidence. Silence is power. I left her office with a plan, and a calm I didn't know I was capable of. Over the next days, more pieces fell into place. Old memories suddenly made sense. A photo from a family gathering by the reservoir years earlier where I had unknowingly captured them standing too close. A moment I dismissed as coincidence at the time. Messages that felt too casual. Familiarity I rationalized as family comfort. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't accidental. It wasn't impulsive. It had been happening for years, long enough to develop patterns, long enough to grow bold, long enough to become normalized in their minds. I began to see the entire structure of my life differently, not as a stable foundation, but as a carefully maintained illusion. And yet I didn't collapse, I didn't spiral, I didn't break down, I prepared, I secured assets, I documented everything. I installed new security systems, I separated finances, I protected my daughter's accounts. I met with financial analysts and legal advisors, quietly, efficiently, without emotion. Because this wasn't about anger anymore. It was about control, about protecting what mattered, about ensuring that when the truth came out, it would come out clean, undeniable, and irreversible. Because lies survive in confusion. Truth survives in structure. What hurt the most wasn't the affair itself. It wasn't even the money. It was the realization that the two people I had invested in the most, the two people I had protected the most, the two people I had trusted the most, had turned my generosity into a weapon against me. They didn't just betray me. They used me. My home, my money, my name, my work, my trust, my silence. They turned my stability into their cover. And while they believed they were safe, while they believed I was blind, while they believed I would never look behind the curtain, I was building a record that would dismantle everything they had constructed. Not out of cruelty, not out of rage, but out of necessity. Because truth doesn't destroy families, deception does. Truth doesn't break homes, lies do. And I wasn't going to carry their secret anymore. By the time I finished compiling the files, securing accounts, and documenting the timeline, I understood something that changed me permanently. Betrayal doesn't always look like chaos. Sometimes it looks like dinner conversations, shared laughter, casual affection, and family gatherings. Sometimes it wears the face of love. Sometimes it speaks in familiar voices. Sometimes it sleeps beside you. Sometimes it works in your office. And sometimes the most dangerous lies are the ones told quietly, consistently, and comfortably over long periods of time. I had lived inside one of those lies for years without knowing it, but I wasn't living in it anymore. I was stepping outside of it, slowly, carefully, strategically, and when the truth finally surfaced, it wouldn't come as an argument. It would come as undeniable reality. The final phase wasn't rushed, and it wasn't emotional. It was deliberate. I understood that truth without structure becomes chaos, and chaos allows liars to rewrite reality. So I structured everything. I coordinated with my legal team, financial advisors, and a digital forensics specialist who authenticated the footage and transaction logs. I organized every file into chronological order, aligned timestamps with financial movements, verified metadata, and created an irrefutable timeline that showed patterns rather than isolated events. Meanwhile, life at home continued as if nothing had changed. Elena still cooked dinner. Cole still worked in my office. My daughter still called from school. Conversations still happened. Smiles were still exchanged. Holidays were still planned. The illusion continued because they believed they were safe. That belief made them careless. It made them predictable. It made them visible. I watched everything without reacting. I documented every interaction. I tracked movement patterns. I preserved messages. I observed how they adjusted behavior slightly, but not enough to hide what they believed I would never investigate. There is a strange calm that comes when you stop asking why and start asking how. How did it operate? How did it function? How was it maintained? How did the system protect itself? Because that's what it had become, not a relationship, not a mistake, not an affair, but a system of deception that relied on my trust to survive. And once I saw it as a system, dismantling it became a process, not an emotion. The exposure itself wasn't public spectacle for the sake of humiliation. It was controlled truth, structured truth, witnessed truth. I chose a family gathering not for revenge, but for reality. Lies survive in private, truth survives in witnesses. I organized a weekend event under the pretense of sharing old memories, home videos, archived footage. Everyone came, extended family, in-laws, relatives, close friends. The environment was familiar, comfortable, safe. No suspicion, no tension, no warning. When the footage played, there were no speeches, no accusations, no dramatics, just silence. Faces changed, expressions collapsed. Reality replaced illusion in real time. Denial had nowhere to stand because evidence doesn't argue, it simply exists. The financial records followed, the timestamps followed, the documented patterns followed. And then the reactions came: shock, grief, disbelief, anger, shame, confusion. But none of it mattered more than the truth itself. Because once reality enters a room, it cannot be removed. My brother's widow saw her son differently. My in-laws saw their daughter differently. My daughter saw her mother differently. And Cole saw himself differently. The identities they had been hiding behind collapsed instantly. There was no version of the story they could tell that would survive documentation, no narrative that could overwrite evidence, no excuse that could erase years of coordination. The system broke. Afterward, everything moved quickly. Cole was removed from the company immediately. Access revoked, accounts frozen, authority stripped. He didn't argue, he didn't fight, he didn't defend himself. People who know the truth has caught them don't perform innocence, they perform silence. Elena tried to justify, then accuse, then deny, then blame, then bargain. The stages were predictable. I didn't engage emotionally. The legal process was already moving. Asset separation had already occurred. Documentation had already been filed. Divorce proceedings were initiated without conflict because conflict requires leverage, and she had none. Her employer was notified through informal channels that couldn't be traced to me. Within days, she was forced to resign quietly to avoid reputational damage. My daughter chose distance on her own terms. Not anger, space. Healing requires space. My family divided in grief, not in loyalty. Truth has a way of forcing people to choose reality over comfort, even when it hurts. And while the aftermath looked chaotic from the outside, it was controlled from within. Systems dismantled, accounts closed, assets redistributed, contracts rewritten, lives reorganized. In the months that followed, I sold the business I had spent decades building. Not because it failed, but because it no longer represented who I was. Buildings, companies, titles, and reputations are only meaningful when they align with your identity. Mine no longer did. I moved with my daughter to a different state. New city, new routines, new surroundings, not as escape, but as reset. Healing doesn't happen in the same environment where the trauma was created. My daughter paused her education temporarily, not as failure, but as recovery. We traveled, we lived slowly. We rebuilt trust in small ways: shared meals, long conversations, quiet evenings, laughter that returned gradually instead of instantly. Trauma doesn't disappear. It integrates, it reshapes you. It teaches you discernment, boundaries, awareness, strength without bitterness. I didn't become colder, I became clearer. I didn't become harder, I became wiser. I didn't lose the ability to trust. I learned how to verify. Years later, when I reflect on it, I don't think about the betrayal with anger anymore. I think about it as a transformation, a forced awakening, a brutal education. Because the truth is, my life didn't end when the illusion collapsed, it began. The version of me that existed before was built on assumptions. The version of me that exists now is built on awareness. The version of me that existed before believed loyalty was automatic. The version of me now understands that loyalty is proven. The version of me that existed before gave trust freely. The version of me now gives trust intentionally. The version of me that existed before thought love meant tolerance. The version of me now knows love means boundaries. And the version of me that existed before believed family meant safety. The version of me now knows family means accountability. My daughter eventually returned to school, stronger, more grounded, more independent. She didn't define herself by what happened, she used it to define what she would never accept. I returned to consulting, helping companies structure logistics systems, but without building empires, without chasing scale, without sacrificing life for status. I chose simplicity, freedom, flexibility. I chose presence over performance, peace over prestige, meaning over money. And for the first time in decades, I felt light. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was honest. No hidden rooms, no secret systems, no silent deceptions, no double lives, just truth, structure, and clarity. I learned that betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from the people closest to you. Sometimes it comes wrapped in familiarity, trust, shared history, and emotional proximity. And the danger isn't the betrayal itself, it's the blindness that allows it to grow. Awareness is protection. Documentation is power. Silence is leverage. Structure is security. And truth, when delivered correctly, doesn't destroy, it liberates. My life didn't fracture, it reformed. My family didn't vanish, it transformed. My identity didn't break, it evolved. I don't carry resentment. Resentment binds you to the past. I carry understanding. Understanding sets you free. The people who betrayed me lost more than I did. They lost identity, stability, reputation, trust, self-respect. I lost an illusion. And illusions are not losses, they are releases. I gained clarity. I gained peace. I gained freedom. I gained a deeper relationship with my daughter. I gained a future built on truth instead of performance. And I gained a version of myself that no longer confuses loyalty with obligation, love with sacrifice, or family with permission. Some people never recover from betrayal because they try to rebuild the same life that betrayed them. I didn't. I built a new one, different foundations, different rules, different values, not driven by fear, not shaped by bitterness, not fueled by revenge, but structured by awareness, boundaries, and integrity. And that made all the difference. Now when I wake up, my life is quiet, honest, simple. There are no secrets in my house, no double meanings in conversations, no hidden transactions, no concealed systems, no performances, just truth, just presence, just clarity. And that peace is worth more than any business, any house, any title, any reputation, or any illusion I ever had. Because the greatest revenge isn't destruction, it's freedom. The greatest justice isn't punishment, it's independence. And the greatest victory isn't proving someone wrong, it's building a life where their betrayal no longer has power over you. That's what I built, a life beyond their lies, a future untouched by their deception, a reality that belongs to me and my daughter alone, and I will never trade that peace for any illusion again.